Hi, this is Stevie Wonder, and we're listening to In Focus, sponsored by the Association of Blind Citizens.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In Focus. I'm your host, John Oliveira, president of the Association of Blind Citizens, and the Association of Blind Citizens is a proud sponsor of the show. So, again, we are in these unusual times. Everyone refers to as different times, not normal times, the new normal, whatever you want to call it. It is definitely something that we are getting used to, learning a lot of new things that we didn't expect to be using. All these different platforms, Zoom and all these other platforms that are out there that people are using to get together. And you're hearing about people having happy hours and getting together with friends and playing cards and all these different activities that people got together to do, and now they're getting together, but they're doing it via an online platform and helping pass the time of day as we, for the most part, in most parts of the country, and this is May, we're still in a sort of a lockdown mode or stay-at-home mode, and unless you have emergency travel or necessary travel that you need to do, of course, you need to get out some food, maybe go to the drugstore, those sort of things. So hopefully you're all doing well and you're hanging in there and learning a lot of new things. I see folks are baking bread, a lot of shortage of flour in the stores and yeast and that sort of thing, so some folks are doing that. Other folks are getting back to some of the crafts and are using sewing machines and that they hadn't used in years. I know the guy in my town said he has a 3-month backup. There's been so many calls for repair that he's taken as many as he can, but people are going to be waiting 2 to 3 months before they get their machine back. Hopefully this will be all over by that time, but he's had a tremendous influx of business where he didn't expect it. And others, restaurants and other businesses that we usually frequent, they've had a total drop-off in business because they've been asked to close or restrict themselves to delivery and takeout. And forget your local bar, then they're just not open. So hopefully we'll get back to the old normal, but we're going to have to go through the new normal for a while before we can get there again. And as far as ABC, we're doing well. We managed to get our camps in. We also we're looking forward to our Beep baseball team, the 2020 season. It's looking more and more doubtful as we move closer to the summer. We have not been able to practice at all yet. A lot of those practices, all of them, have been canceled. And we continue to watch for orders and instructions from the government to see when we can bring our players onto the field. We have definitely moved any games that we had scheduled for June. Those have been canceled. We're trying to work some of it into the fall. We're still considering the World Series, but by this time we've committed to it already. We have not been able to commit to it yet because we are not sure that it's going to be held. Even if it's held, we're not sure if our players will be ready physically to take the rigors of playing 2 to 3 games a day in a week-long period. We usually have lots of training going on. They're doing some self-training, but it's not like the in-person training that we do on a regular basis starting in March. So that's up in the air. We'll keep you updated as we move forward with that. And some of our summer events, we're still hoping to hold them. Our regular summer luncheon, if the restaurant is open, we can certainly do that. And that's not until August sometime, and maybe we may have to push it back a few weeks, maybe take it into September, but hoping that can happen still this summer. So we'll keep you updated on the show, so tune in. Again, if you're listening to us live, we are broadcast on the Talking Information Center, the Massachusetts Radio Reading Network, right on the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. So tune in, and if you are not catching us live, if you're catching us on our website, it's blindcitizens.org. It's posted there shortly after it airs, so check it out. I know there's lots of shows there for In Focus. If you want to hear other shows, we have well over 100 shows there. So feel free to drop by and listen to what we've been doing for years. And we are also looking at also bringing other guests on. So if you have any guest ideas, drop me a line, president@blindcitizens.org, president@blindcitizens.org, and you'll be able to recommend guests to us. If you're a guest and you'd like to be on, then drop us a note, and we'll be glad to do that. And as you know, we talk to many individuals who are doing things in the blind community, providing services, providing products, involved in research, involved in any kind of project. And we also talk to a lot of folks who are visually impaired, legally blind, and what they're doing. So you never know what you're going to hear on In Focus. And so keep the guest ideas coming, and we'll be glad to get folks on. So today we have a very interesting guest that happened to call me about something else. And before he knew it, I was twisting his arm and getting him to come on to the show. Good evening, Thomas, and welcome to In Focus.
Well, thank you, John, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show. And yes, everyone, I called about one topic, and as you said, we just started chatting, and then as they used to say in the magic world, abracadabra, and here we are. But I was listening to everything you're saying about the pandemic. It reminds me of that song, Upside Down, Inside Out, and we're definitely upside down and inside out.
That's right. That's Thomas Bozzi, a inspirational speaker, and we're going to be speaking to Thomas about his life and his what he's experienced in life as being a visually impaired person. And yes, this pandemic is something that we have never experienced before, those of us that are alive today. I think there's a few people that might have experienced back in 1918, if they're still around. There might be a handful left. There'd be a little over 100, and maybe they've made it. Maybe most haven't, though. And we certainly haven't. And I guess this will be a story that we'll be talking about, Thomas, for the next number of years, because this certainly will go down in history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to be part of something more positive, but as you mentioned, the baking, the sewing, there is going to be something positive, or there is already things positive coming out of what's happening. And, I love doing activities. We'll talk about those. But what I've learned is it's not so much the activity I miss, it's the people that I do the activity with. There's a wonderful phrase at the end of The Wizard of Oz where she said, "I'm not going to go any further than my own backyard." And really, we had everything we wanted before with our friends and family. So let's pray that we can get back to that.
Yeah, I guess we're looking to go a little further in the backyard, that we've been confined to our backyard for a long time now.
Right.
At least it's been here a good 6-7 weeks here in Massachusetts, but in other states it's been shorter. In other states it's been around the same time. And yes, so sometimes you can get what you need at home in your backyard, but you always need that extra, a little bit of contact, human contact, away from the homestead, and that is we're finding that we're missing that a lot. And we'll get back to that a little more as we go on with our interview here. So, Thomas, let's talk about you as a younger person growing up. Now, you didn't experience visual impairment until you were in adulthood, a young man of how old did you say you were?
I was 21 when I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa.
Mm-hmm. And as we know, it's quite a prevalent eye condition. And for the good part, though, it's an eye condition that if you're going to have it, it does take a while before you start losing some of the functionality of the vision that you've had as you grew up. So when did you say you got diagnosed at 21? How did you notice that? What brought you to, I'm assuming a doctor saw you, what brought you to see a doctor?
Well, I was playing in a band with my brothers. I'm a twin, and my twin brother, his name is Stephen, has the same eye disease that I have. So in 1957, when I was born, there was no way of knowing if we're an identical twin, but he and I said, well, we both have the same eye condition. We're probably identical twins. But I was playing in a band with my two brothers and at a place called the Hi-Ho in Fairfield, Connecticut. And that's where I met my late wife, Lori Ann Rogers, became Lori Ann Bozzi. And on the break, it was in those days before internet and all that. On the break, you would mingle through the lounge and talk to people and have a list of names, you know. And as I would go back to the piano, I used to bump my knee, stub my foot, and I used to say to Lori, I said, I feel like I need light screwed on the side of my head. You know, I said, going up there, you know, so she said, you need glasses. I said, no, I don't need glasses. I can see, you know, I need light screwed on the side of my head. And then after the gig, when I would drive her home, they had a porch light. And if I looked at the porch light, I could see her. But if I turned my head in the car, I couldn't see her, and I could see the porch light. So that led to an eye exam. And after an hour looking at a bunch of different things, the doctor called me in, and I was 21 years old, and I had my eyes dilated. I drove there myself. I had no idea what dilation was. I had to call my father to come and pick me up because I couldn't see when I walked out of the doctor's office. So he brings me in, and he says, you have retinitis pigmentosa. I said, what? He goes, and you're going to be blind by the time you're 30. I said, what? I said, I'm 62 and I have a 3-degree field of vision. And very quickly, a lot of people say to me, do you pray for like a miracle? To me, the miracle already happened because at 62, I can still see. My field of vision is now, but I can see. So I was 21, and that's how I found out.
And that's the good thing about RP. It's different in a lot of individuals. Some folks, it's very slow. Others, it's a little more rapid. So you never know. And so you got this diagnosis, and so this is quite a while ago. You just said your age. And, you know, to tell you the truth, a lot of the, I don't know, what would you call it, bedside manner or the relationship that doctors have when they deliver that news, they give you the worst case scenario. And they don't know if you're going to be blind at 30 or 40 or 50. You know, yes, you're going to have restrictions of vision. But and as you just stated, you still at your age, you have a substantial, a good amount of usable vision still. And you're still able to get by. Yeah, exactly. So what did that make you feel? I mean, he tells you you're 21 years old, you're playing in a band, and that this doctor just says you're going to be blind before you're 30. What did you do? What was in your head at that point?
Well, the first thing I did, like I said, I came out of the doctor's office. It was a beautiful sunny day, and now my eyes are dilated, and I realized I can't drive. So I called my father. My father owned a grocery store in Fairfield, and so he came to pick me up, and I told him, and being Italian, we're Italian descent, my father's first generation, I'm second generation, says, oh, that's nonsense, that's not going to happen, that whole thing. So, anyway.
Well, that's the first stage, that's denial. Which
that's denial.
A lot of people live with that for quite a while. And if something is slow moving and it's progressing slowly, then you can get away with that type of thinking for quite a while. Did you agree with your father? Were you sort of concerned?
I was 21. It was young.
Right.
I wasn't, to be honest with you, John, I wasn't really concerned. I wasn't worried. It was, to me, I never felt that I was, I say that I'm differently abled, but I never felt disabled. I always felt like my vision was like a colic. It was just like a little blip. And so I wasn't really concerned. I had told my then girlfriend. And then, to be honest with you, we just marched on. My brothers and I went from that 3-piece band into a 7-piece band, toured all up and down the East Coast when Michael Bolton was very popular at the time. And I just really went about my living. We used to go down to Bellevue. Down in Bellevue, Dr. Carr was running tests. And so once a year, my father would take my brother and I, but it was more like Father and Son Day. We'd get something to eat and come back to Connecticut. And I wasn't really concerned until I became the president of the Connecticut affiliate for retinitis pigmentosa, because then I saw the big picture.
Okay. So you moved on, and then you continued to live your life and did what you needed to do. And did you, job-wise, was that your job in the bands, or did you have something else you did during the day?
Oh, I had a bunch of. I sold pianos, and I taught the piano. And then did work at my father's grocery store. And then at 23, I got tired of working in the grocery store, my brother and I, so we started painting houses. And here I was with retinitis, was still driving, and my brother Stephen and I painting condominiums with a paint company. And then by 1987, we launched our own painting company, which we called Twin Painters. And we painted, but it was such a gradual. And then what happened was, so many years into it, we started to say, look, by 4 o'clock, we have to leave because we couldn't stay till 5:30, 6 o'clock, especially in the fall when it got darker. So we started to negotiate our driving. I would drive during the day, but then again, my wife, I got married in '84. Then she used to do the nighttime driving. Then she also used to say, "I'm going to drive all the time because you're a lousy driver."
Okay, so you started to manage the situation in your own way, working your life, working it into your life, and when you found an issue, you you found a different solution and you got around it, and so that worked out well. You painted houses, and that's good close work. I mean, did have no problem probably doing that, and because of the field of vision you had and it was good vision, and you could certainly get by until you mentioned it around the dark. So you drove, and then you started limiting your driving, and you mentioned that you became, president of the RP Foundation?
And I became president of the Connecticut affiliate for retinitis pigmentosa, yes.
Right. And
I was 34 at the time.
All right, that's pretty young, and you're looking at that, and you're still painting houses, right?
Yes, and there were people in our group who had much less sight, and I said to my wife at the time, I said, "Boy, this thing I have is going to be a problem." But up to that point, from 21 to 34, I was just going along, like everyone else.
Right. So that sort of gave you an education and sort of brought you into reality that this, as you moved on or got a little mature in life and went along, that things would happen. So when was the first major? So you were president of the organization for the affiliate for a few years, couple years?
You're only supposed to be in those days for 1 year, but I was doing a nice job, let's say that, and so I did it for 3 years.
They obviously are very much into the research side, and so you saw a lot of the research that was going on, which has continued since then, but you saw a lot of the research, some of it promising, some of them, not so promising.
At that time, vitamin E was the big thing back then.
Right.
But I think the real eye-opener, there were two quick things that I mentioned. There was a gentleman in our group who had a young daughter who was 12, and she was diagnosed in January, and by December she was totally blind.
Right.
That to me, then the other thing is we had a fundraising dance, and my friend Keith Hodder, who has his RP, he was a fundraising guy. And anyway, so our team had this fundraising dance. And there was a gentleman, and his name was John as well. And we had the dance, and his sister came up to me, and she was in tears. And I said, "What?" She said, "Tommy, you met somebody. You're married. I even had a daughter at that time, my daughter Emily." She goes, "But what about my brother? He's only 22, and he has less. How is he ever going to meet?" She was in tears. And I said to myself, "My God, I've been blessed. This is really a problem, But in that, up into those two stories, and there's something else to talk about later, with a car accident, I was a little bit not so much in denial, but figured, okay, I'm okay,
Mm-hmm.
But that really struck me home when she was telling me about her brother, and she was so concerned, and I could still see him on the dance floor with his mother, just kind of rocking back and forth,
Right. Yeah. So yes, as you mentioned that, I also had a friend when I was, 9, 10 years old, that he was diagnosed with RP around that age. And by 15, 16, he was totally blind. And then his younger sister, also similar thing, by the time she was in her teens, was totally blind. So yeah, that's why I was saying earlier that it affects people differently. And again, you mentioned the research. Did you participate in that vitamin research or?
Yeah, you're going
project?
back a lot of years. I remember I went down to Baltimore, and they had Maryland. They had a conference, and so I was doing those types of things and still making my yearly visit with Dr. Carr and his assistant, Penny. I forget her last name, but I remember Penny was her name. And, they just did a lot of tests and stuff, and then basically in those days said, okay, we'll see you and your brother next year. And so on to Connecticut we went. And that was...
It was a lot of gathering of data back in those days, and I said the more data they can gather, I guess they can put it together and come up with a possible solution to the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned, you were president of the affiliate for like 3 years, and then you mentioned a car accident. So,
well, my brother and I had the painting. Yeah, my brother and I had the painting business, and we would drive, and then like I said earlier, about 4 o'clock, we would say, okay, guys, you guys finish up, because we had employees and all of that, and then we would head home. But this one time, and we had a couple of fender benders, like normal people have.
Yeah, just laugh those off, no big deal, right?
Yeah, we had a fender bender. We're talking when we should have sipped the coffee, that kind of thing. But the last one, we were leaving a job site. It wasn't our fault at the end. The last one, we're leaving a job site. All the ladders on a truck. He and I in the truck. The guys are behind us in their trucks. And we come to a stop sign, but the stop sign was covered with a vine. We go to proceed, and this guy, who actually was disabled with his hand, he had a stick on his steering wheel. Anyway, he runs the stop sign. We didn't see it. He hits our car, and his car flips right over in front of us.
Oh.
My brother, right over. You could see the hole underneath. So the fire department comes, the cops, they cut him out with the jaws of life. But by the grace of God, when the cop came over, he had the skid marks. We didn't. So they said it was his fault. But at that point, my brother and I were 41 years old. We said, we're done driving. Because we thought maybe a sighted person would have seen it. This was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was not, and it was summertime. But he went to run the light. So otherwise, they did get him out. He did live, all of that. And so it was at that point that my brother and I said, you know what, no more driving. So we turned our keys over, and our wives then were our means of being ambulatory. And my wife drove me on estimates. She drove me wherever I had to go and never complained about it.
Well, there you go. So you had a 2-person team coming to do the estimates, and so did you stop doing the jobs at that point, or did you continue your?
No, still kept working. But then what we began to do is, because we had a good team of guys, my brother stayed more in the office, and I was still able to do the estimating. But then what we would do is, then I would begin to be like the high school guy. In other words, I would move the furniture. I would put the drop cloths down, and I would let the mechanics do what I used to do, cutting in the crown molding, doing cabinet work like that. I began to regress back, taking the switch plates off, doing more of the menial labor stuff, cleaning up the job site like that, because I never felt that I was handicapped. I would see veterans and I say, gee, those men are handicapped. They served our country. They lost a limb or something. I said, but I can walk and talk. So, I mean, I didn't go for the disability till I was down to 4-degree field of vision. And they said to me, you should have come in here years ago. The state of Connecticut says you're legally blind at 20 degrees. But I just kept my brother going to work, figure, okay, I can't paint the window, I'll move the table. I can't paint the house, I'll cover the bush. From that generation, you just figure it out,
All right, so you were able to figure it out, and you continued to do and live your life as. So, are there any real stories that maybe you have that's as you went along, and maybe you missed something or you went someplace? Are there any stories that you find humorous that
I'll tell
you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I tell you.
Any of those what we call blindness stories?
Those blindness stories. The funny thing is as my blindness got worse, I used to go on estimates, and so you walk into a house and you can't find Mr. and Mrs. Jones because the lighting from outside to inside. So my doctor said to me, he says with RP, your pupils are slower. They open and close slower than a sighted person. And so he says, when you go into a house, he said, then I started having people come with me, and I would just say, oh, this is Frank. He didn't work for it. Frank would look around, and then when I get in the car to write the estimate, he would say, Boz, that was my nickname, there was a crack there or something there. So my doctor said, he goes, you're from Long Island, you're Italian. He says, you can talk. He says, when you go in there, just stand in the foyer of the house and just kibitz with the people a little bit. He said, then your eyes, you'll start to notice where people are. So one time this woman said, why are you still standing in the hallway? I said, oh, well, I just like to look around and just, chat with the people before. She goes, well, we really have to get going, so why don't we start moving through the house? I was like, okay, so off we went. But the other thing was one time my brother and I were painting, it was November, and a woman next door said to me, would you like to come over and give a price on a house? I said, yeah, when we're done. So my brother and I walk over, and we walk up this big colonial, we walk up these steps, big front door, and on either side were these big side lights that you could look in the house. Well, it was 4:30 in November. It was getting dark, so I look, and my brother had the estimate box, with the papers in it, and I look, and this woman had this beautiful black and white floor and all these trees, ficus trees with white lights in them, and this big staircase, and I said to my brother, I said, you got to look. I said, this lady's house is beautiful. And now we're just, you couldn't help to see it. It's 4:30, even though we could. And so the lady opens the door. She says to me, what are you looking at? I said, well, I just noticed your house. It looked nice. She goes, I don't want to hire you because anybody scoping around like that is only going to try to break into my house or something. I said, ma'am, you have this beautiful foyer that I just couldn't. But I think it was the way I was moving my head to see. Because you got to take the camera and aim it where John, you could walk up there and just with a glance, you would be able to see the woman's foyer. So I think the way I was moving my head around, I guess so we didn't get her job. And so anyway, that was that. But I mean, there's hundreds of things of, little bumping into this and bumping into that kind of thing.
Right.
Well,
there you go. That's stories that you continue to manage. So when did you stop the painting thing?
Well, the way Connecticut is set up, I came up to what we call the northwest corner, about an hour from where the company started, and I was still actually painting, what I call painting, doing shutters and doors, up until I was about maybe 53. And then what I did is my brother was mainly in the office. At that point, I became more of the marketing guy and doing estimates. I was still able to do the estimates, but by 53, 54, it was getting harder because what happened is I would estimate the jobs, and then the guys would show up, and the foreman would say, didn't you see that mold behind that door?
You're missing little things. Huh?
Right. I start missing things. I would say, oh, we could be done in 5 days. They said that whole side up there was peeling, But so little by little. So now I started to bring the guys with me, and sometimes people would say, they say, gee, why are you here with you and a guy? The other painters just come by themselves. I said, well, he's the foreman. And then one time a woman, we were working there, and so I was going doing the buggy lugging kind of thing. And so the woman said to me, she said, there's something wrong with your vision. I said, how do you know? She said, because you never drive. She said, every time you pull up, you're always... And I said, well, I have to make phone calls. See, for years, I always called it Superman and Clark Kent. In other words, I knew I was... But, how many people want a guy that's visually impaired? So I set up with the woman. I told her, I said, but I know how to run the company. I have quality people. I said, irregardless of whether I can do the work or not or drive or not, you're going to get a good job, and we guarantee what we do. But she picked it up that I was never in the driver's seat.
Oh, it's a very perceptive lady.
Yeah, very good.
So,
because she was
did she give you that job or no?
Yeah, no, we were already working for this woman. So she was home. She was a stay-home mom. So now she's home, and the truck pulls up in the morning, and I'm on the right there. And then she would notice that even at the end of the day, okay, goodbye, I never got in the driver's seat. I always got in the passenger seat. So when if someone wasn't home, they wouldn't pick it up. And my brother and I are always nervous about people knowing that we were visually impaired, because they go, well, no one's going to want to hire us. You started at age 30 when we started the business. When you get to age 50, no one's going to hire you. So now you say, we got to make this work. So now you start playing. Now you start playing the game. You start playing the game. I have to make phone calls. We had a lead generating service, and people would call me and say, I'd like you to come out and look at the house. Well, the sighted guy would say, okay, Mr. Jones, I'll be there at 4:30. I used to say, well, my truck is having a repair. I'll get back to you. Then I would call my friend, and a lot of, up here in Torrington, a lot of retired guys who would drive me. I'd call my friend, Tom, his name is Tom as well. Say, Tom, can you take me out of Okay, yeah. Then I would call the people back and say, oh, yeah, the truck's going to be out of the shop by 4:30. I could, not that I was lying. I was, but I was trying to keep income coming in, but I had to come up with a reason why I couldn't book the appointment right there.
Right. All right, so then you're getting towards, so you're thinking about staying in the office, or what did you do to manage that situation?
Well, then what I began to do is mainly just sell the jobs. And actually, I sold the job. I'm not with the business anymore. My brother now has it. I'm pursuing something else. But I did it. I went on an estimate last year, and I was walking around, and this was another woman, and she was home. She worked from home, and she said to me the same thing. She goes, "There's something wrong with your vision, isn't there?" So I told her honestly, and she said, this is another woman, and she said to me, "I'm very proud of you." I said, "Why?" She goes, "Because I have multiple sclerosis." And she says, "I think people who are disabled, who live their lives and go on and create business, I think is admirable." She goes, "I don't care if you need 100 people to paint my house." She goes, "I want to hire you, just the fact that you're out there." And she did. We did a lot of work for her. So
there you go. There you go.
So I did. I started to realize that I began to go on estimates toward the end of my career, and I would tell the people, "I'm visually impaired, but I know what I'm doing." And most people said, "Great," and I would have someone with me, and most people were okay with it. Sometimes just tell the truth,
Right. Well, there you go. I mean, so what you're afraid of turns out to be something that's good and turns out well at the end. So we've been chatting for quite a bit, and so now you're into inspirational speaking.
Yes, I've done.
Judging by your interaction here, I think you must do a pretty good job at that too. So you moved out of that industry, and tell us where that road took you.
Well, 5 years ago, I've always done a lot of motivational speaking. I've done a lot of fundraisers for churches. I was involved in the largest fundraiser for St. Patrick's Church in Bridgeport. And for years and years and years, people have been saying to me, "You should be a motivational speaker. You should be I was a lecturer at church. I had a priest say to me, he says, "Your voice is amazing." And on people would tell me. Well, 5 years ago, my wife died of lung cancer. And I say this in my talk. I was so far down, I had to look up to see hell. And here I am, legally blind. My daughters are married and moved out of the house. The dog's gone. We actually had cows. My younger daughter raised cows. The cows were gone. And here I was in this house. Everything was gone, including her. And I said, now what? And you talk about, I had such a wonderful marriage. And it says in Scripture, it says that a man will cling to his wife, and I did. And I'll tell all you guys out there, I may be digressing, but I'll just tell you this, sighted or not sighted, you have a wife, you have someone, you have everything. No matter what happens to you, RP, this, that, the job, the pandemic, you walk in the house or you're in the house and you have your significant other there, you have everything. You have everything. And so Peggy Richard, my my Bible instructor, said to me, Tom, you need to find a new purpose. That because if God wanted both of you, would have taken both of you at the same time. But for some reason, you're still here. And that's when I began to take the inspirational speaking seriously. And then 2 years ago, by the grace of God, I met a wonderful woman named Veronica Neary, who her husband died of cancer. Neither one of us dated, and we both enjoyed dancing. And the moment I started dancing with her and pursuing this new career, my life took the biggest 360 you ever want to see. And here I am legally blind, and I do contra dancing, which is like square dancing. I do square dancing, and those of you in the audience who know what square dancing is, imagine it being 3-degree field of vision in a square of 8 people, and I am up to the plus level, and people moving around. But I practice because what I've learned is when you harness your desire, and when I speak in public, I say to people, you're only limited by your attitude. Now, I'm not going to become a fireman, John, but and so Veronica has been so wonderful in guiding me and encouraging me with her gentle spirit. I say to people all the time, some guys can't find one, and God sent me 2. And so in this new part of my life, I have been able to inspire more people with my blind dancing than I probably have ever done before. And if we have time, I can tell you a great story about contra dancing. But so
no, we have time. But some of our people might be into contra dancing, and I know that several blind folks that I've known pretty much have participated in square dancing and contra dancing. So tell us about the story.
Well, I'll tell you about contra dance. So I started square dancing 3 years ago. Veronica took me there with my birthday, my 60th birthday, and said, you want to see what square dance is about? I said, fine. And I got hooked, and I loved it. And I practiced. Now, I have to practice more than everybody else, but that's okay because that's what I need to do. Because, like I tell people, it's like, like when Derek Jeter used to throw the ball from shortstop to first base. He didn't look to see if the guy was there. He threw the ball. The guy better be there, right? But when I square dance, I know the moves so well from so much practice that when I put my hand out or my arm down, I know the person, even if I can't see them there. But like I said earlier, when you harness your desire, when you find something that you love, then you make the effort to do it. So Veronica also, she brought me to contra dancing because after she lost her husband, it took her a couple of years, she began to do these dancing things as she began to rebuild her life. And so she takes me to contra dance, and there's this step called the hey. You guys would call it a figure 8. But now you're doing, in contra dancing, unlike square dancing, which is a square, you're 2 people. So it would be myself and Veronica and, say, you, John, with your wife. Okay, so we're facing each other. But you're in a column of 40 people or 50 people that stretch the whole length of the dance hall. So now you're doing all this choreography with 40 people doing the same thing and another 40 people in a column behind you. Now, for those of us who are listening, that are visually impaired, you're only seeing parts of people. So there's this one dance step called the hey, which you would call a figure 8. But you're following your partner figure-8ing while all these other people are figure-8ing, okay? Well, when I saw that step, I said to myself, that's the trickiest step they have in contra. And Veronica said to me, she says, when we go, if they call, that's what they mean, call the dance, she said, we'll just walk straight through the line. We won't do the figure 8. But I said to myself, no. My father didn't raise a quitter, and vision or no vision. So what I did was I came home. This would be, I saw what the thing was. I came home. I put 4 chairs in my basement. And for a month, I went around and around and around and around and around those chairs till I had it perfect. Well, then we go back to the dance the next month, and we line up, and we're dancing, and the caller says the hey. Well, I do it perfectly with her, swing the partner. Boom. She grabs my hand. She says, Tommy, I didn't tell her what I was doing because I wanted to surprise her. And so then we got done with the dance. I said to her what I did with the chairs. I said, I love you. I said, not only that, I said, just because I had, the vision doesn't define me. My vision has helped me to find me. I'm not defined. I say I have retinitis pigmentosa, but my name is Thomas Bozzi, not Thomas retinitis pigmentosa Bozzi. Okay? So I learned to do the hay. Well, the greatest thing was a month later, we go back in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and now there's all the new people there, going to learn ContraDance. And the caller says, Tommy and Veronica, can you come up in front of the class and show everyone how to do the hay? So here's me, 3-degree field of vision, and my beautiful girlfriend walking up in front of all these people doing the hay. It's not so much about me, but this is what I mean about when I talk about having a purposeful life. What happened later that night, as Veronica and I are dancing with this column of people are saying to me, wow, Tommy, if you can do it, what's holding me back? If you can do it, well, I should learn how to do this better. So by my blindness, I was able to inspire people that night to become more sighted or unsighted. And so I was able to touch people's lives. So by me learning this thing to please her, there was a greater purpose. There's a wonderful song by the group The Byrds, and I'll wrap with this, and it's called Turn, Turn, Turn. And they extrapolated that song from the book of Ecclesiastes, and it goes through seasons in our life, the time to plant, the time to harvest, the time to laugh, and the time to cry. But there's
I know the song.
You know the song, okay? Well, there's a line in that song that says there's a time for every purpose under heaven. And the word every is inclusive, and it means even people like myself. So my purpose, helping those other sighted people to stretch and grow and become more, they were inspired by the fact that me, was able to do this through practice and whatnot. So we all have purpose, whether sighted or unsighted. So I'm not giving up the reins in life. I'm not sitting back. I'm 62 years old. My mother just passed away. She was 90. So I got maybe 30 years. I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so
there you go.
I do it. And the guy, the caller, I'll end with this, he said, and Tommy is legally blind, he told everybody. He said, and he's a pretty damn good contra dancer. And, but it's amazing what you can accomplish when you Helen Keller said it the best. I feel sorry for the people who have sight and have no vision. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm not sighted, I still have a vision.
Right. That's excellent. And so you are going around and doing inspirational speaking. And so we've been chatting with you for a bit. We always like to give our guests an opportunity to give out their contact information just at this point, so our audience can grab something to record or jot something down with here. And why don't you first, let's give them your phone number and then give them an email address it's good to reach you at.
Okay, my name again is Thomas Bozzi. I go by Tommy, and my phone number, I'm in Connecticut, is area code 203-257-3668. And that's my cell phone. And my email, it's Tommy.Bozzi, Bozzi. I mean, that's how you spell Bozzi. I'm not added to that. Tommy.Bozzi at AOL.com. And if I may interject, someone said to me one time, gee, Tommy, for an inspirational speaker, doesn't sound professional. I said, well, here's how I work. My mother always said, whatever a mother calls a child, so will the rest of the world. And when I started my inspirational speaking career, my mother always called me Tommy. And my late wife always called me Tommy, and Veronica calls me Tommy. So I think if the three important women in my life can call me Tommy,
so Tommy it is.
Tommy it is. So there you go. And it's casual, we want people to know that Tommy's fun. Thomas sounds like, I don't know, the president of the school.
Too formal, right?
Too formal.
So have you been involved with the RP group? Have you kept up with the research? There's a lot of research over the past couple of years that's come out, including some new injectable type treatments or medications. Have you kept up with that at all?
Quite frankly, I haven't. Because when I moved from the southern end of the state, which is an hour away, that's where my core of RP buddies were. But ironically, last July, they contacted me out of the blue. I haven't seen these people in 30 years. They didn't know that my wife died. They didn't know that we had cows. They didn't know that I was with Veronica. And they came up last July, the woman who was the guy who was the fundraiser, Keith Hodder, Kat Grucey was the vice president, I was the president. They brought her son because he drove, and the three of us got together and went over the 30 years that we missed. And they filled me in on all of the new things that are going on. And so, but when I left there and came up here, and like I said, we're so busy showing cows for 14 years, I was going along. But now that they're back in my life in a big way, I have been listening and reading about some of the things that are going on with genetic testing and that whole thing.
Yes. And genetic testing and gene therapy and that sort of thing. So there's some breakthroughs. There's a doctor here in Boston that's even done some kind of genetic, I don't know what you call it, implant or genetic, introduced some gene into a child's eye to see if it could either totally slow down the progression or maybe even cure it. So I haven't seen the results, but it's been about a year now that they've done that sort of treatment. So there definitely is a lot of research going on in that area, and there's been some low vision devices that are specifically designed for people with RP that seem to really work with the vision that you have to try to maximize its use. So there is lots of different things going on, and I know our listeners are always interested in that.
Yeah, I will say this. When my father died 7 years ago, on the back of his mass card was the song On a Clear Day, because it deals with vision. And we said in lieu of flowers and all of that, and a lot of donations went to fighting blindness. My mother just passed away in November, and the same thing. People made a lot of donations to fighting blindness, so we still contribute. And in honor of my parents, a lot of people did that, which I think is wonderful. And so, I'm on board for the research. I was, when I was younger, a little nervous myself. I used to tell my late wife, if they go in there and I lose what I have, then what? You know what I mean?
Right.
But now being, as you get older, even, Thomas Jefferson says, never stop learning. So as you get older, you get a little more wisdom. You know what I'm saying? So at 62, I'm a little, not a genius, John, but a little bit smarter than I was when I was 33,
Yeah. So just before we close here, you mentioned something about the cow business. You said you showed cows?
My daughter, when we moved up to Torrington is a much more rural area than where we were in the southern end of the state. Because you're from Massachusetts. So we showed at the Big E. And Rachel started with rabbits. Okay, she started with rabbits. I mean, here, I'm a kid from Long Island. I grew up on a 40 by 100 lot, but I always liked animals. I actually raise rabbits today. And so anyway, make a long story short, so we come up to this part of Connecticut. She joins 4-H with a rabbit, and then one year she says, Pop, can I show cows? Well, I'm a yes father. I'm yes. Whatever the kids wanted in terms of doing new things, yes. And so I said, sure. And so we leased for a couple of years, and the next thing I know, we have 10 cows, and she kept them at a farm because our yard wasn't big enough. And we showed at all the ag fairs. We showed up at the Big E. She had a string of jerseys. She ended up becoming the 5th best dairy handler in all of the 5 New England states, Massachusetts included. And,
okay.
I don't know if we have time for a quick story. Go ahead.
Oh, we have plenty of time. So I've been to the Big E a few times, and so that's what the cow showing thing. You go to fairs like that, and what do you get? Ribbons or?
Oh, you get ribbons and money.
Okay.
Ribbons and money. We're Italian. Money's important. But here's a quick story. When I was a kid growing up in Long Island, I used to get up because in those days we only had church on a Sunday. So I would get up with my brother and run downstairs, and right after Davy and Goliath, the puppet show, was a show called The Modern Farmer. And I loved it. The tractor, the hay, it showed animals. And then my mother said, come on, time for church. I said, Ma, I want to watch The Modern Farmer. And I was a kid. I had rabbits in the backyard. In those days, you could have animals on a small lot, And we had ducks, at Easter, and I had a garden. So I was an ag kind of kid. You know what I mean? I wasn't that great at Little League, but I was an ag kind of kid. I had animals and all that. Okay. So life progresses, and then in 2002, we move up to this part of Torrington. 2003, Rachel, my 6-year-old daughter at the time, gets involved, as I said, with 4-H, with a rabbit, which leads us to the cows. But the ironic thing is, before Rachel, I have another daughter, Lori, and her name is Emily. And we would take her up to the Big E every year because she was born in September. And I used to say to my late wife, instead of having the party with all the, why don't you, I, and Emily, we're the parents, she's the kid, let's go up to the Big E, all right? So we go up to the Big E, and we're walking into the Mallory building. Now, you've all been there. You see the big fenced-in area with all the shavings. We're walking in the Mallory building. Now, there's no Rachel at this point because my kids are 5.5 years apart. So Lori's ahead, and I'm pushing the stroller. Of course, Emily's not in it. And those of you who are parents, you have the stroller, but the kids are never in it, you know. And so I'm pushing the stroller, and Emily has a little cowboy hat on, and she's walking behind her mother. And I look into the ring. Now, this is 1995. I look into the ring, and I see, the kid with the numbers on it. And I said to my wife, I said, now I'm from Long Island, right? I said, and living in Bridgeport at the time. I said to my wife, people still do this? Like show animals? That's how neat. She goes, I guess so. She shrugged her shoulders. Right. Now, there's no Rachel yet because Rachel wasn't born until 1996. This is 1995. And I see the ring. The kids are walking around. Okay. Now fast forward the tape to 1999. And my younger daughter, Rachel, is 13 years old. And she's been in 4-H. You have to be 13 to go to the Big E. And here I am, in the same Mallory building with that now 5-year-old daughter is now 19. My wife's sitting there, and I look, and in comes my 13-year-old daughter, Rachel, all in white with the numbers. And my older daughter slaps me on the knee, says, Pop, could you have ever imagined when you and I and Mom were over there walking into the Mallory, that you would ever be sitting over here and your daughter would be walking into the Big E exhibit with showing cows? John, I had tears in my eyes. Because here I was, a kid that loved ag, and I guess Rachel, I was speechless. I said I could never have imagined that would ever happen. And she went right past us. Have you ever been up there? You sit on the and my late wife looked at me. She had tears in her eyes. I mean, it was such an emotional moment because I never could have imagined it. The thing about life, my friends, is live it. Because what you can't even imagine can happen to you. And that was such an amazing thing to see her go into the ring, and she did very well. And there we were in Dairy World, and for 14 years we showed cows. We had the trailer, we had hay, we had the whole thing, things that I would have loved as a kid in Long Island. But where I grew up, it was Little League and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I said to Rachel all the time, I loved those 14 years. I think when she sold the cows, I was more hurt than she was. I said to her, Rachel, they don't make a box big enough for what you gave me over those 14 years. Because she and I, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're up at the fair. And my older daughter would come up and she would help with the cows, and all of that. But it was just a wonderful, totally different lifestyle than I ever imagined it would be. And so we showed cows, and then anyway, now that my younger daughter works at the post office, and she made a decision to sell the cows, and she's getting married next April, and so, life moves on.
Life moves on, that's right. So Tommy, before we wrap it up here, let's give the folks your information again one more time. And Tom, as you guys are hearing, will be a great speaker, an inspirational speaker. And in these times of pandemic, if you're looking for anyone, he can work with Zoom, he can work on any platforms. No need to go in person anymore now that we know all these platforms are out there. Tom is available. So Tommy, give us the folks your name and number again, email address, and we'll wrap it up after that.
Okay, Tommy Bozzi, cell phone is 203-257-36 888. That's my personal cell phone. Email address, Tommy dot, got to put the little dot in there, Tommy.Bozzi, spelled B-O-Z-Z-I, at AOL.com. And for those of you listening, I am on LinkedIn. Those of you in the business world, you may have a relative, and you can search for me on LinkedIn, and there is examples of my work there and my education history and all of that good stuff.
All right, very good. All right, Tommy, thanks so much for being with us tonight, and I really do appreciate you coming on, and loved hearing your stories, and you kept me entertained, and I'm sure you kept our listeners entertained. So if, again, I'm looking for a speaker, you know the man. He's right there. You've heard him for an hour. Certainly a good sample of his work, and hopefully some folks will reach out to you sooner or later. My name is John Oliveira. You've been listening to In Focus, and it's great to be with you every month. And if you are looking to visit our website, it's blindcitizens.org. If you want to listen to the show on the Internet, it's In Focus, and just click on that link, and a variety of shows will be there. And that's going to do it for us. And hopefully you all stay out there, stay safe, and follow instructions that keep you safe, and we will get through this, and we will be better on the other side. And Tommy still will be giving his inspirational talks, and the world will be a good place. And we'll talk to you all next time on In Focus. I'm John Oliveira. Stay safe. Until next time.